Welcome to Story Time, where tonight, we bring you a soothing yet deeply reflective tale, Echoes of Dublin, a story of ordinary lives. Let this gentle story lull you into a peaceful sleep as we drift through the quiet streets of Dublin, where everyday people carry their silent dreams and sorrows. The rain had been falling since early evening, a steady, unhurried drizzle that soaked into the cobblestone streets of Dublin, washing away the dust of the day. The city hummed in the distance, but here, in the older parts, time moved more slowly. The flickering glow of gas lamps stretched long, golden shadows across the pavement, and the smell of damp stone filled the air. Eamon O'Sullivan pulled the collar of his coat higher around his neck and stepped carefully along the narrow street. He had walked this way every evening for years, past the same shop fronts, past the same crooked alleyways, past the same cafe where a warm light always spilled onto the pavement. Inside, Bridget Doyle sat at her usual table, her fingers curled around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. She watched the rain slide down the windowpane in thin, silvery lines, her thoughts drifting through the years, settling in places she rarely visited. She had been a schoolteacher once, before time had folded over itself and carried her into quieter days. There was a time when her classroom had been filled with the laughter of children, when she had believed in shaping young minds, in the power of words. Now, the world had grown quieter, and she spent her evenings in the cafe, where the hum of conversation made her feel less alone. The cafe door opened with a creak, letting in a gust of cold, rain-scented air. A young man stepped inside, shaking droplets from his coat. He was no older than 20, his face still carrying the softness of youth, though his eyes held something older, something restless, something unsatisfied. His name was Daniel Byrne, and he was a poet in spirit but a factory worker by trade. Each morning, he woke before dawn, his hands rough from labor, his mind filled with half-written verses that never made it to paper. He longed for something more, something beyond Dublin streets, beyond the weight of expectation, but something always held him back. Eamon had seen the boy before, sitting alone with a notebook he never quite seemed to write in. And tonight, for reasons he couldn't explain, he gestured toward the empty chair at his table. Daniel hesitated only for a moment before sitting down. They spoke in quiet tones, their conversation meandering like the river that wound through the city, slow, steady, filled with unspoken depths. They spoke of work, of childhood, of the way Dublin held them all in its grasp like an old friend who never let go. Bridget listened without meaning to, her gaze flickering toward them every so often. She knew this feeling, this quiet understanding between strangers who shared the same streets, the same air, the same unspoken longing for something just beyond reach. The night deepened, and outside, the rain softened into mist. The cafe emptied, chairs stacked, lights dimmed, but still, they lingered. Eamon told Daniel about his father, a man who had spent his life fixing watches, though he had always dreamed of traveling. He never did go, Eamon murmured, turning his cup in his hands. Said there was always something to be done first. Then one day, there wasn't any time left. Daniel nodded, silent. Bridget thought of the years she had spent waiting for love, waiting for change, waiting for the right moment. She thought of all the times she had told herself one day, and how, without her noticing, one day had turned into never. The clock on the wall chimed softly. It was late, and the city outside had settled into quiet slumber. Daniel stood first, tucking his notebook under his arm. "Good night then," he said, his voice carrying something lighter, something quieter. Eamon nodded, watching as the boy stepped out into the misty night. Bridget met his gaze, and for the first time that evening, she smiled. There was a comfort in knowing they were not alone. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city exhaled. And so, as Dublin streets settle under the night's quiet embrace, let this story guide you into a deep and restful sleep. Thank you for listening to Story Time, where every story is a whisper in the wind, lulling you into dreams.
Thanks for your time. Please subscribe. Don't forget to press the bell icon for more.